Mr. Glass at tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to be talking about Vic Fangio's press conference, a lot of the things that he said this press conference, some answers that we kind of need right now regarding this defense going forward, and what's to come. A lot going on here. 10-2. Let's get into it.
A killer buried, but not dead.
Darren, we better turn around. Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
If I'm the betting man, and I am, and you're rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles, this is the redemption year for Jalen Hurts. This is the year we get the bad taste out of our mouths from last season. If I'm going all in, ride or die with a Super Bowl and bringing that Lombardi trophy back to Philadelphia for a second time, you need to go to BetUS, and I'm not wasting any time with it. I'm putting $500 down as the risk and getting $7,000 back at the end of the year because this offense is going to be explosive. This defense by Vic Fangio is going to be dynamic. A 150% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 with code YouTube150. Click the link in the description below. Start betting and start winning. Going to have to start off with some bad news. And the news that everybody does not want to hear when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, when it comes to injuries in general. And yet again, Dallas Goedert is hurt. And it was weird because even watching the game this past week against the Baltimore Ravens, like I didn't even notice he was hurt. Obviously, I'm streaming, I have the volume down, so I'm not really seeing anything until really after the game, maybe the morning after, something like that. But after watching Seth Joyner's podcast and the doctor kind of saying that, that they weren't hearing a lot of big news on Goddard's injury, so I guess that was a good thing. So not season ending. It's a knee sprain for Dallas Goedert. This is his, third injury already? I mean, look, he had the oblique injury coming out of camp. Then he had another injury. He came back a couple weeks ago and had an ankle injury that was very minor, okay? And then gets injured in this game against Baltimore. So as long as he's back for the playoffs, I don't care. You have obviously the Panthers, you have Pittsburgh, and you have obviously Washington, the Giants, the Cowboys. So, I mean, you want to get through the next couple weeks, the next few weeks. You want to lock up this division as fast as possible, work on that first seed, see what kind of transpires the next few weeks. The good thing about the situation is that Calcaterra has started a lot of games for the Eagles this season. Okay, the last couple years. Okay, so Calcaterra has a lot of starting capability, so you're not really worried too much about it. And thank God, knock on wood, Calcaterra has been relatively healthy for this team. But the only problem I have now is that since, we got the news that Paris Campbell was waived, obviously some guys are coming back. They cannot elevate any tight ends from the practice squad to the active roster because you can only be elevated 3 times. And because Dallas Goedert was out for so long, they had to elevate other guys throughout those weeks when he was gone, those couple of times, So that's where things get a little complicated. So I don't know if they're going out to get another tight end. Maybe that's why they're waiving Paris Campbell. I don't think Devontae Smith was on, he wasn't on IR or anything like that. He was still on the active roster. He still counted towards the roster. So I don't know if they're making another move as of right now when it comes to a backup tight end, but they got to figure this out as quick as possible. Like I said, Calcaterra, I'm perfectly fine with, but now since you've elevated so many guys, because Dallas Goedert's been injured before and missed a good amount of games. I forgot how many games he missed, 4 or 5 games. I don't know how many games he missed this season so far, but now you're slim pickings when it comes to elevating tight ends, which you're kind of run out of those choices now. So what do? You got to hope that the next few weeks, Calcaterra can stay healthy. It would be nice if you're not going to use a tight end. Maybe you do some different things. Maybe you use a little bit more Will Shipley out on the flat or something. Maybe you get some of these wide receiver 3s involved. Johnny Wilson is still out right now, but, Jahan Dotson is there. So I know I talk this over again and again like a broken record, but, this is obviously not great news. the Eagles have got to get their tight end of the future next season. It's time. He's 29 years old right now. He's got 2 more years left on his contract. I don't even know if Goddard is going to make it through another 2 years. I would say that Goddard will be here next season because if they do draft somebody, Calcaterra is not going to be. Unfortunately, Calcaterra is not going to, be a starting tight end just because I just don't think he is, and his blocking is subpar at times. I think he's gotten a lot better. So we'll see what happens with this situation going forward and into next year in the offseason, next year's draft. It's eye-opening. It's every year. This guy's out 4 to 6 games a year, or now he's out more than that. So missing a lot of time and statistics are getting messed up and, it sucks, but this is what we're going to have to deal with when it comes to the Dallas Goedert situation. Now, I want to talk about Vic Fangio. He had his press conference today, talked about some players. You love hearing Vic Fangio. Every time a Vic Fangio press conference happens, you tune in because Vic Fangio is old school. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. Vic Fangio is just he's great. He's fantastic. You love the way he kind of talks about players and he doesn't hide from anything. It's what the best traits about him. Now, the first thing I kind of want to talk about here is obviously the 3-man rotation for the Eagles at defensive end. Now, he hasn't used this type of rotation since he was with the 49ers. I don't know how many years ago that was, but it was a long time ago. Okay. With Bryce Huff being out for the next few weeks with the minor surgery, he'll be back. Once Bryce Huff comes back into the lineup, everything will be a little bit better. You're hoping everything's going to be a little bit better when he returns. Guys are producing really well. I mean, it's working. This rotation's working. Nolan Smith playing great. Josh Sweat playing great. He talked about Jalix Hunt as well, kind of saying there's good, there's bad. But realistically, guys, Jalix Hunt, this is like his second game with probably the most snaps he's had in a game. A few weeks ago, when Bryce Huff ended up going out of the lineup, he had 20-something snaps for that game. It was a few weeks ago. And then against the Rams, he only had 9 snaps in the fourth quarter. Apparently, we heard from last week that Fangio said that Jalix Hunt had an ankle injury he was dealing with, so that's why his snap count was a lot lower against the Rams going into that game. But theoretically, this is his second game with a lot of snaps. It's going to take time. He needs time. He's only been a special teamer most of this season, but this is your third-round pick. I want to see what this guy's about. And the more snaps he gets, and as Fangio says this, when guys get more snaps, they're going to get better. Guys coming off the bench and starting a couple games, they're not going to look too good in the beginning. It took Cooper DeJean a few games to kind of relatively get settled into this defense. So things just take time. This defensive story this season in 2024 has been, this defense has been growing, and every week it's been taking time. Time has been the big essence of, guys getting better. And playing well and playing better together under really good coaching. So, we'll see what happens, down the line when Bryce Huff enters, comes back to the defensive line. Bryce Huff, it's going to take him a couple weeks, it should be another 3 weeks. He'll be back. So he'll be back before the season's over, technically. So he'll have some time to kind of get himself right, get himself together, depending on seeding and how much rest we're going to have. We'll see what happens, after the last regular season game and how everything kind of looks in that direction. But that's the 3-man rotation right now. Keeping guys fresh is really important for this defensive line, and it's been working, and they're just getting better, which is great. Now, Fangio did talk about Tristan McCollum. We just talked about him the other day, coming in for Reed Blankenship, soft tissue injury. He's got a lot of high praise for Tristan McCollum at safety. Okay, obviously you have Reed Blankenship, you have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. What Howie Roseman sees through his eyes is way different from when Vic Fangio looks at other players, because Howie Roseman has a different vision for specific players that he acquires, and Fangio has, totally changes things. An example of that is when they acquired Zach Bond in free agency for $1.6 million for that 1-year deal. Howie Roseman thought Zach Bond was going to be a backup outside linebacker / special teams demon. And Fangio was like, nope, I see him as an inside linebacker. And I don't know. Fangio just has that eye for seeing talent in players. And look what he did with Zach Bond. Zach Bond is having a better year than Fred Warner. Zach Bond is having as good as a year as Luke Kuechly had a long time ago. I read some weird stuff earlier today. Like Zach Bond has been one of the best proteges really since Navarro Bowman. I mean, when Fangio was there on that squad and that coaching as a coaching hire. It's insane how Fangio's views could be different than Howie's views. There's obviously a collaborative effort here, but he talked a lot of good things about Tristan McCollum and where he's at. Thinks he could be a really good safety going forward. So Sidney Brown might not be, maybe Howie Roseman has Sidney Brown on a higher panel maybe, and maybe Vic Fangio just doesn't like. Maybe Fangio's not a big fan of Sidney Brown at safety. I think they should do something else with him. They should cross-train him somewhere else, probably inside corner or something where we're really lacking right now at this moment. He's been a good special teamer for us. He's been back, but he's been behind as well because he was out for a while with the injury. So he's really just trying to catch up and, so we'll see. Like I said, Howie Roseman, Vic Fangio, two different views. They might like the same players at times, but when it comes to views of what their future could be, Fangio has been better at that, instead of Howie Roseman really strategically saying where a player is going to play and where he thinks he's going to be in his career. Fangio knows talent when he sees it, and that's where it is. So it's nice to really hear that from Vic Fangio on Tristan McCollum. And on top of everything else, he did talk about Isaiah Rodgers in this press conference. I love how Vic is just straight up with everything. That's why I used to love, hearing Jim Schwartz's press conferences. Love Fangio's press conferences for this. He talked about Isaiah Rodgers and how, do they feel comfortable with more Rodgers with Slay being out or more Keely Ringo? And he talked about Isaiah Rodgers pretty much saying that sometimes his coverage is, his coverage ability is good. Sometimes his play is sloppy. He said his play is sloppy at times or something like that, but does like Isaiah Rodgers. So I get what he's saying a little bit. Isaiah Rodgers, I think Isaiah Rodgers is the better corner than Keely Ringo right now. It's just because Keely Ringo hasn't, when you throw Keely Ringo into a game and then he's a backup for another 4 weeks and then he comes back in again if there's an injury. I don't like that because, then, teams are going to be aiming for him. And normally these guys just don't play well because you're coming in not even, you're practicing with the team for weeks. You're barely getting into games. And when you do, you're not really playing, you haven't played in any games. So you can't look that fantastic at times unless you're playing consistently. So I think Isaiah Rodgers is solid as a number 2 right now until Slay comes back, whenever that's going to be, because we're gonna need Slay's help definitely later on. I think one of my biggest, probably one of the biggest weaknesses to the cornerback spot, at least in Isaiah Rodgers' game. Sometimes his tackling is lacking. He does tackle high up sometimes. I think that's one of his biggest issues. But other than that, he's going to win some. He's going to lose some. But, he's been fine. He's been solid. I've had really no big issues with him, on this roster. So nice to hear that. To hear the truth, at least. Next on the list for Vic Fangio was just being a part of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, we all know Vic Fangio grew up a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I thought this was just a nice thing to say, obviously. It's funny because I was watching the 25-10 show. It was, the 25-10 show with Deshaun Jackson and LaShawn McCoy. This was very recent, not too far. When Vic Fangio left the Miami Dolphins, okay, the Miami players were not happy with what was going on. They didn't really like him. He was a hard coach. They just couldn't really handle him, I guess. And we were wondering why the Eagles players love him so much. We needed a tough love type coach in Vic Fangio. I think this is what we needed so badly. But we know the news that Vic Fangio was trying to come back here the last couple years, and he said it in his press conference. He was trying to come back the last couple seasons. After the 22 Super Bowl, Jonathan Gannon was supposed to be the defensive coordinator. It was already set in stone, and then he kind of backed out of it, and then he had obviously the illegal tampering, where from the NFC Championship game to the Super Bowl, Gannon was not focused on running this defense. He was focused on being the next Cardinals head coach. And I think that was part of why we failed so bad in that Super Bowl in 22, on top of all the other problems that we had. So because of the timing issue and why and Fangio was set in stone, Jonathan Gannon was set in stone in 22, he left and said, you know what, I need to go get a job, and he couldn't really wait any longer, so he got a job with Miami. But remember one of those Miami players after Vic Fangio left? Remember the video that popped up from a Miami Dolphin player? That player was actually on the 25-10 show with Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy, where he kicked that rock on the video as soon as Fangio was let go by the Miami Dolphins. He was asked, I forgot who the player was, what his name was, but he pretty much said, like, watching Fangio coach the whole year, it just seemed like he didn't want to be there in Miami. He didn't want to be in Miami, apparently. The players were kind of getting that hint that he just wasn't all in with them last year, I guess, or just didn't look like all of his energy was into it. Not really sure if that's what he said on the show. So it's already showing here from Vic Fangio that he wanted to be here earlier. He was here as a consultant, helping the offense, helping with seeing the offense at defensive looks and what they should do. So Fangio came here as a consultant in 22, not helping the defense. It was the total opposite of that. So it was nice hearing all of that. And he says it brought him a little bit of satisfaction. Growing up an Eagles fan, whether you're a kid growing up and playing for the Eagles or becoming a coach, it's probably the best feeling in the world. And on top of that, having success like Fangio is having. Fangio defense hasn't been really good in recent years since he was with the Bears. To be honest with you, 2018 was probably the best year. 2018 was probably the best year for the Bears defensively. It's the last time he was really that successful. Miami had a good defense last year, but it was one of the worst against the pass. It was okay against the run, and they were top 10 in pressures, top 3 in pressures, top 10 in hitting quarterbacks, but their pass defense wasn't great. And I think because you have a really good GM that knows how to bring talent to this team and draft really well, let me tell you, that just helped Vic Fangio so much in the process. And, because every defensive coordinator goes to different teams to be a DC, how much say did Fangio have in collaboration on getting players in other franchises? You never know. Things do change, but I think Fangio has a lot. And I'm not just saying this now. I think Fangio has a lot of power. I think he's had a lot of power since he was a consultant with the Eagles in 22. And they let him run his defense how he sees fit. And he is the masterclass, old school, reaction type defense, the Fangio defense. We all know what it is. But now trusting his players week by week and doing different things that in past recent years the Eagles would never kind of run. It's been heavy zone and playing basic and not doing much of anything else. And, sometimes the bend don't break doesn't work that long every single week. And it's been really dominating and so fresh. And, I hope Fangio's here for another 30 years. Not going to happen, but I hope he's here for as long as he could be. He won't leave here. He's been a head coach. He's been a DC everywhere else. And I think this will be his last pit stop before he retires. And hopefully the Eagles can win a ring because of it. And I don't think Fangio has ever won a Super Bowl on a team that he's coached defensively. I'm not really sure about that. So I thought this whole segment was really cool, and it kind of reminisce a little bit on some of the things I've seen the last couple of weeks from his goings from Miami coming to the Philadelphia Eagles, how the Eagles players reacted when he first got to OTAs, and it seems like this team needed an asshole coach. And I don't know, we haven't seen Fangio, we haven't seen a practice on how he coaches, but it's probably a tough love type atmosphere. And that's what the Eagles really needed. That's what this team really needed. The swagger had to come back, and that's how important it was. So I was really happy about all that. So we got a glimpse of obviously Vic Fangio and just how things are going with this defense, and it's just going to continue. I think my biggest pet peeves of this defense is if I have to really nitpick at anything, I think it's, he talked about Avonte Maddox on that play, and he's got a, the two, well, he talked about the one, but I'm complaining about another one. Obviously, the one where Andrews, he's the one that held Andrews when Mark Andrews when Andrews had that, but Josh Sweat had the sack on that holding call on Avonte Maddox. Every time Avonte Maddox is in the game, he's always committing something. And then he gave up that big pass to Andrews in the end zone, and that's a really good tight end, by the way. I mean, he's 6'5". His catch radius is ridiculous. He says that pass has got to be broken up. It's got to be broken up, or it's got to be picked off. So Maddox screwed up a couple times. He's one of the biggest weaknesses. I really hope Avonte Maddox isn't going to be the cause of our downfall. Like, it comes to this one play, Maddox is in, they're playing dime for some weird reason, and it goes down to Avonte Maddox, defending somebody, getting burnt by somebody in a Super Bowl or in an NFC Championship game or any type of playoff atmosphere. It's really going to suck. I'm really hoping that he is out of really the big moments in games in the playoffs, because that really sucks. And obviously, the number two reason that I nitpick at this defense is they need more turnovers. I mean, Baltimore fumbled a few times, couldn't get one fumble off the ground. We have to get some picks, man. It can't just be the safeties. We need corners to live up. We have Nakobe Dean. We've had Zach Bond get some picks this year. I need to see more turnovers from this defense, no doubt. If I was to really nitpick and be annoying about it, that's where I'm kind of at with the whole entire situation. Now, I didn't go through the Kellen Moore press conference way too much. Really, the only issue I have right now, realistically, is these really slow starts. And Kellen Moore was like, we've started slowly too many times. It's something we got to figure out. Well, this isn't hard to figure out, dude. Who is coming up with these sequences every single game? You go into that Ravens game, you start off. I don't like playing from behind. I can't stand being down. You're down 9-0. The defense is making stops, and you're wondering how long the defense is going to hold up before they get tired. And it seems like they weren't tired at all, because they were making plays all game. We weren't getting the calls that we needed defensively either on some of these holding calls too. So that kind of annoyed us as well. Is it Nick? Is it the passing game coordinator with Kevin Patullo? Like, what is it? Like, give me an answer here. Like, Kevin Patullo has been here a while, too. We keep forgetting about him. Now, there were some Eagle fans in the chat a few days ago actually talking about, well, maybe they're doing it on purpose. Maybe they're doing this on purpose to feel out the defense. Well, obviously, that's not the case now, because if Kellen Moore is stating this, maybe Kellen Moore won't state that it's part of the game plan. He doesn't want to give teams that information. But this is every week, man. Every single week. Every week this happens. I don't, except maybe one or two times this year. But most of the time, if you want to bring in if you want to count in statistics for the Eagles' first quarter, if you add the first quarter into first quarter alone, it's got to be dead last in the league. Dead last. This is where we're getting nitpicky, but guys, this isn't a nitpicking situation. This is the situation where you go into the playoffs, what if your defense doesn't hold up for a couple series? What if something happens, a big play happens? The defense is pretty damn good. But what if they're not perfect for one game and your offense is playing like this? And you know how that happened? The perfect example of what happened in the game when your defense couldn't hold up was obviously that Tampa Bay game. You're down 21 points. The Eagles couldn't get anything going. 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And your defense was, obviously at that time, it was early in the season. We were not great defensively. Heavy zone the entire game. The corners were giving too much cushion in that Tampa game. So I completely understand. I completely get it. Okay. But that's the one thing that's got to get fixed. Other than that, I really don't have, maybe running the football more in the first half. I don't know. I mean, realistically, I think they're fine. I honestly think they're fine. It just looks like I'm watching a completely different offense in that first half. It used to be the first quarter. and then it was the first half, and now it's like even the second half to that Rams game didn't look perfect either for a couple series. They kind of looked like they were still trying to figure it out. I don't know, but we've been pretty good. We've been fine, but that's really like the slow starts have. We've got to minimize on that by a little bit. At least play a good half of a first quarter. I don't even care if it's like a half of a first quarter. Just do something. So that's the nitpicking for really the offense going into these first halves of games. They got to do better than what they're doing. I mean, you can't play from behind. And look, the Eagles play from behind. They come back, they win. They keep doing it, and they're scoring a lot of points, which is great. So can't really complain about that too much. But we have something to always complain about here when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. So other than that, guys, let me know what you guys think. Like, has Fangio really changed the philosophy for this team when it comes to eyeing talent, overruling Howie Roseman on decisions? And we talked about Tristan McComm, Jalen Carter being held in games, obviously trying to get him free in some of these games, talking about Kellen Moore, the offense. How do the Eagles fit the slow starts? Who do you think is the blame for these slow starts? Who do you think is play calling? Whose sequence of these scripted play calls who are they coming from? What are these plays are coming from what coach and why? You leave a comment in the comment section below. And we'll have a lot more to discuss soon. Big week this week. Another week going on, hopefully to become 11-2 and doing great things. So, yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Eagles news every single day. Make sure you like the video. It helps out tremendously for the channel. And I appreciate everybody's support. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Shakes what up. Follow us. Peace out, guys. Peace.